Hey everyone, tonight we're not stepping onto a battlefield, but into a place colder than any front line. Imagine a cattle car, rattling across the Siberian night, packed with bodies too weak to stand, too afraid to speak. Your breath hangs in the air like smoke. But here, even smoke has value. Because in the GULAG, survival could be measured in something as small as a cigarette butt or a spoonful of rot-gut vodka brewed from moldy bread. You've heard of Stalin's prison camps, forced labor, starvation, endless snow. But what's less told is how drugs became the last currency of survival. A drag of tobacco could buy you mercy, a sip of poison liquor could numb a night, and a stolen vial of morphine. That could be the closest thing to freedom you would ever taste. This isn't just history. It's an anatomy of despair, where addiction wasn't escape, but the only way to make it one more day. If exploring the darkest corners of the past brings you a strange kind of calm, please like and subscribe. And in the comments, tell me, where are you watching from? And what memory of winter's cruelty has never left you? Now lean closer, because our story begins not with chains, but with smoke rising in the frost, your first day in the GULAG, and your first cigarette. You stumble, more pushed than stepping, from the cramped, stinking darkness of the cattle car. The metallic screech of the braking train, a sound that has become a constant ache in your ears, finally grinds to a halt. The heavy door, a slab of wood and iron, slides open with a groan that echoes the weariness in your own bones. You are not prepared for the shock. A blast of Siberian air, sharp as a shattered icicle, slaps your face, stealing the last vestige of warmth from your numb body. It's a bitter welcome, a cold so profound it feels less like temperature and more like a physical pressure, pressing in on you from all sides. Your worn, thin boots sink immediately into a snowdrift that stretches endlessly, glittering under distant, indifferent stars. The ground is a vast, white canvas, broken only by the ragged silhouettes of bare trees and the ominous shapes of distant barracks. The silence, after weeks of clattering rails and shuffling bodies, is absolute save for the crunch of snow underfoot and the ragged coughs of your fellow prisoners. As you stand there, shivering, your breath crystallizing in the frigid air, a figure brushes past you. Without a word, a damp, almost spent stub of a cigarette is pressed into your palm. The paper is soft with moisture, the tobacco within barely a whisper. You look at it, then at the man who gave it to you. A face etched with 1,000 silent stories, eyes holding a chilling emptiness. He simply nods, a slow, deliberate movement, before melting back into the shuffling line. You bring the stub closer. The scent of stale tobacco is a sudden, unexpected comfort in the biting air. It's a faint, smoky promise against the overwhelming cold. This isn't a place where bread is currency. Your stomach might growl with constant hunger, but a crust of dry bread holds little sway here. Blankets, too, are scarce, thin barriers against the relentless frost. But their worth is fleeting. No, you learn quickly, instinctively, that cigarettes are the true money. A drag, a single inhalation of that acrid smoke, can purchase a bowl of watery soup, a slightly less crowded spot on a freezing bunk, or, perhaps most crucially, a moment of mercy from the brutal fist of an Urka, one of the hardened criminals who rule these desperate camps. A wry, bitter joke circulates like a whisper on the wind. Welcome to the GULAG. The central bank is your lungs. In this desolate, frozen realm. That saying holds more truth than humor. You soon discover that smoke is the singular indulgence, the only vapor you are permitted to draw deep into your body without the swift, merciless retribution of the guards. It is a strange, paradoxical freedom, this ability to simply inhale, to momentarily fill your starved lungs with something other than the piercing, empty cold. You light the stub, your fingers clumsy. The small flame is a fragile beacon in the immense darkness. The first drag is harsh, stinging your throat. But as the smoke fills you, a fleeting warmth spreads through your chest, a tiny, defiant ember against the vast, indifferent chill. It is a fragile comfort, but in this place, such small comforts are everything. The sun, when it appears, is a pale, indifferent disk in the vast, gray sky, offering no true warmth, only a faint illumination that makes the cold seem even more stark. Days bleed into weeks, and weeks into months. The temperature plummets, sometimes to a horrifying 40 degrees below 0 Fahrenheit at night, a chill that seeps into your very bones, gnawing at your resolve. You learn to live with the perpetual ache, the frozen crust on your eyelids when you wake, the brittle sound of your own breath. One evening, as the biting wind howls like a starving wolf outside the thin walls of your barracks, a quiet invitation is extended. A nod, a glance towards the darkest corner of the communal space, hints at a forbidden gathering. You follow. A strange mix of fear and desperate hope, drawn by the promise of any momentary reprieve from the relentless cold. The air in the back barrack is thick, a heavy blanket woven from the stench of unwashed bodies, stale wood smoke, and a sour, cloying aroma that tells its own story. It's the smell of decay, of something fermenting slowly, ominously, in the shadows. Here, huddled around a makeshift, crude, still fashioned from salvaged metal and tubing, a small group of prisoners are engaged in a dangerous alchemy. They're brewing vodka, a rough, potent moonshine, born from the most unlikely and desperate ingredients. Moldy bread, salvaged from the rations, its green fuzz a testament to its age, is mashed and left to ferment. Rotten potatoes contribute their starch, and in the most chilling instances, a whisper goes around, a shiver of understanding, that they sometimes resort to even more desperate measures, adding truck antifreeze, its toxic sweetness a perilous gamble, to accelerate the fermentation. A crude cup, chipped and stained, is offered to you. The liquid shimmers dully in the dim light of a hidden candle. You hesitate, the smell assaulting your senses, a mixture of yeast, sourness, and something chemical, vaguely dangerous. But the gnawing cold, the constant, crushing despair, triumphs over your caution. You take a gulp, it's like swallowing fire, a searing inferno that courses down your throat, setting your chest alight. Your eyes water, blurring the already indistinct shapes around you. For a precious, fleeting moment, the relentless cold that has been your constant companion simply vanishes. It's replaced by a dizzying warmth, a strange, floaty sensation that lifts you, however briefly, from the brutal reality. The world seems to soften at the edges, the harsh outlines of your despair momentarily muted. Then, a sudden, sharp rap on the barrack door. Your heart leaps into your throat, a frantic bird trapped in your ribs. The brewing operation is hastily covered, the telltale smells masked as best they can. But the guards, their faces impassive beneath their fur hats. No, they always know. Their eyes, sharp and assessing, scan the room. But their usual aggression is muted. In a surprising, almost conspiratorial silence, one steps forward, a heavy hand outstretched. Another cup is filled, offered without a word. The guard takes a long, slow swig, his face momentarily softening, a flicker of something human passing through his hard eyes. Before he nods, grunts, and retreats into the bitter night. He leaves you to the lingering warmth and the unsettling knowledge of this shared, dangerous secret. A bitter piece of humor is sometimes exchanged among the prisoners. A whispered truth. If the booze doesn't kill you, the frost will. The gulag always keeps balance. In this place, you understand, even death finds its own twisted form of equilibrium. The rhythm of your days is dictated by the relentless, brutal demands of labor. Every dawn brings the same soul-crushing tasks, often hauling immense logs from the frozen depths of the taiga, the vast, unforgiving forest. The air is always sharp with the scent of pine and the metallic tang of sweat. One brutal afternoon, as the axe bites deep into a stubborn trunk, your footing slips on a patch of ice. A sickening crack echoes through the stillness, more felt than heard, and a searing pain explodes in your arm. You fall, the heavy log pinning you momentarily, the cold ground biting through your thin clothes. The pain is a living, clawing thing, stripping away your composure, leaving you gasping, curled on the frozen earth. Somehow, you are carried back, or perhaps stumble back, a haze of agony distorting your vision. The camp doctor, a grim-faced man whose hands carry the faint scent of carbolic acid and despair, examines your mangled limb. His touch is surprisingly gentle, though his expression remains unreadable. He prepares a needle, the small vial glinting in the dim light of the infirmary. You watch, numbly, as the clear liquid is drawn into the syringe. A quick prick, a fleeting sting, and then a profound, almost divine warmth begins to spread from the injection site, radiating outwards, dissolving the agony. It is morphine, a potent balm in this land of ceaseless suffering. For the first time in what feels like an eternity, in years perhaps, you feel peace. A strange, blissful quiet descends, not just over your body, but over the frantic, terrified churning of your mind. The weight of the gulag, the gnawing hunger, the freezing cold, the ever-present fear, all of it recedes, replaced by a hazy, dreamlike stillness. Word, like a secret carried on the biting wind, spreads quickly through the barracks. The doctor's supplies, though meager, are a source of immense power. Morphine, that fleeting warmth, that sweet escape, can buy almost anything. It's more valuable than gold. A single shot can secure a larger portion of bread, a thicker, warmer coat against the crushing cold, or even, for a precious few moments, a fragile sense of safety from the brutal realities of camp life. It is the medicine of the damned, offering not healing for the body, but a profound, albeit temporary, respite for the tortured soul. The Urka criminals, with their tattooed faces and eyes that hold the cold emptiness of the tundra, control the flow. They are the gatekeepers of this desperate paradise, their influence absolute. You, like so many others, find yourself drawn into their web. A silent negotiation taking place with desperate glances and hushed whispers. You learn the ritual you must trade. Your meager bread ration, a piece of worn clothing, the last remnant of a precious family trinket, anything that holds a sliver of perceived value. For that one shot, that fleeting warmth, when it spreads through your veins, feels more like freedom than anything you've experienced since your arrest. It's not freedom from the camp, but freedom within the camp. From its pain, its hunger, its crushing despair. A dark, whispered joke, heavy with truth, circulates. Morphine doesn't heal you. It just makes dying polite. And as that gentle quiet settles over you, you understand the chilling truth of that sentiment. In the flickering, smoky gloom of the barracks, life takes on a desperate, subterranean existence. Beyond the official, brutal order of the GULAG, a parallel world thrives, a shadow bazaar, born of pure misery and the primal urge to survive. Every barrack, every communal space, however cramped or squalid, holds its own secret marketplace. Here, under the watchful, yet often complicit, eyes of the guards, everything becomes currency. Everything has a price, a half-smoked cigarette stub, still warm with the last breath of a dying ember, might be traded for an extra ladle of thin, watery soup. A vial of morphine, glowing faintly with its promise of oblivion, could fetch a prized, albeit threadbare, coat against the unyielding cold. The value of an item is not intrinsic, but entirely dictated by the immediate, desperate needs of the buyer and the cold, calculating greed of the seller. Prisoners, with an ingenuity born of desperation, become masters of concealment. Bottles of crude, burning vodka are carefully wrapped in rags and tucked deep inside worn, oversized boots, their clinking sound masked by the shuffle of feet. Precious pills, perhaps a stolen fragment of actual medicine, are meticulously hidden within hollowed-out logs that serve as makeshift seats, or smuggled inside the seams of patched clothing. Every pocket, every fold of fabric, every loose floorboard becomes a potential hiding place, a miniature vault for the fleeting treasures of this hidden economy. The air itself seems to hum with unspoken transactions, with the silent language of desperation and desire. And it is not only the prisoners who participate in this grim charade. The guards, those figures of authority and terror, are themselves caught in the oppressive grip of the Gulag's twisted economics. Their official pay, a meager pittance, often amounts to less than the street value of a single bottle of the potent, illicit vodka. And so, they too become players in this shadow game. Their uniforms and rifles providing a layer of protection as they trade their own small allowances, their meager privileges, for a drag of tobacco, a gulp of searing alcohol, or even a moment of peace from a pilfered injection. They are both overseers and participants, enforcing the rules while simultaneously bending them. Their own humanity chipped away by the same brutal system that crushes the prisoners beneath their boots. In this inverted world, where justice is a forgotten word and hope a dangerous illusion, drugs become the only true constitution. They are the silent laws that govern daily life, dictating interactions, establishing hierarchies, and offering the only semblance of control in a life utterly devoid of it. The black humor that pervades the camps, a shield against the unbearable, distills this truth into a chilling observation. Justice here is measured in smoke and alcohol. You see it in the eyes of the haggard men, in the way a simple cigarette butt can spark a brief, intense negotiation, in the way a whispered offer of vodka can ease tensions or ignite brutal conflict. It is a fragile, dangerous order, built on the foundations of misery, sustained by the constant craving for escape, however fleeting, however perilous. The Shadow Bazaar is not just a place of trade. It is a testament to the human spirit's desperate will to find even a sliver of agency in the face of absolute dehumanization. The nights in the Gulag are a special kind of torment, a vast, echoing darkness where the cold finds its most potent voice, howling through the cracks in the barracks. It's during these long, suffocating hours that the desperate search for escape often turns fatal. One particularly brutal night, the air thick with the scent of pine and desperation. A chilling drama unfolds in a nearby barrack. The silence is suddenly shattered by sounds that are not quite human. Gurgling cries, guttural moans, a frantic, animalistic thrashing. You and others listen, your hearts pounding a frantic rhythm, knowing instinctively what is happening. Men, driven by the gnawing hunger for oblivion, have consumed a spoiled batch of antifreeze moonshine, its toxic allure proving too strong to resist. The sight, when the frantic screams draw you closer, is horrific. Men writhe on the frozen ground, their faces contorted in agony, froth bubbling obscenely from their mouths, their bodies convulsing in a dance of poison. One by one, their movements slow, their eyes glaze over, and they fall silent, their forms stiffening quickly in the unforgiving snow. It's a macabre tableau, a testament to the perilous gamble of seeking solace in a place designed only for suffering. The quiet, desperate hope for numbness turns into a swift, agonizing end, a brutal reminder of the thin veil between relief and death. In another corner of this desolate world, a different kind of tragedy unfolds, with a chilling, almost poetic silence. A prisoner, pale and drawn, injects too much morphine. The initial euphoria, the sweet, deceptive peace, quickly gives way to something else entirely. A strange, unnerving laughter erupts from his throat, high-pitched and unhinged, echoing through the barrack. It's a laugh devoid of joy, a sound of pure, untethered madness, a final, defiant shriek against the encroaching darkness. Then, as suddenly as it began, the laughter ceases. A profound silence follows, a vacuum where life once was. He collapses, his body going slack, his journey into oblivion complete. It is a quiet death, almost serene, yet terrifying in its suddenness, a testament to the drug's power to make dying polite, as the black humor suggests. Sometimes, the madness is collective. An entire barrack, driven to the edge by a tainted brew, descends into a chilling spectacle of delirium and despair. Men hallucinate, screaming at unseen tormentors, clawing at invisible wounds. The air is thick with the cries of the insane, a cacophony of shattered minds, a terrifying echo of the true hell that lies beneath the surface of the Gulag. The guards, when they finally arrive, move with grim efficiency. They do not pity. They do not question. They simply drag the bodies out, one by one, their forms rigid and cold, leaving them to freeze stiff like logs in the vast, indifferent expanse of the Siberian night. The ground becomes a silent, frozen testament to these lost souls. Another unmarked grave in an endless landscape of despair. A chilling piece of camp wisdom, whispered with a knowing tremor. explains this horror. In the Gulag, overdose was called mercy. A faster death was the kindest death. In this place, you understand. Even death is viewed through a lens of brutal practicality, a swift end often preferred to the lingering agony of existence. In the frozen, suffocating world of the Gulag, where true power resides with the guards, an intricate, unwritten social hierarchy flourishes amongst the prisoners, enforced not by decrees, but by desperate needs. You learn this rule quickly, deeply, with every passing, starving day, no drugs, no status. It is a silent, unshakable law, more potent than any official regulation. Your place in this grim pecking order is not determined by your past life, your intellect, or your former station, but by your access to these precious, forbidden commodities. The Urka, hardened criminals with elaborate tattoos and cold, predatory gazes, stand at the apex of this twisted pyramid. They are the purveyors, the distributors, the kings of this shadow realm. They dispense smokes, those precious, life-giving cigarettes, like divine favors, holding court in the dim, smoky barracks. To receive a drag, a mere puff of that acrid, comforting smoke, you must approach with a deference that borders on supplication. You must bow, metaphorically, if not literally, your posture conveying a humble acknowledgement of their power, a silent plea for their fleeting generosity in their hands. A single cigarette stub becomes an instrument of immense influence, a tool for control, a symbol of their chilling authority. It is a profound and cruel reversal of fortunes. Men who once held positions of respect and influence, professors with minds full of philosophy, writers whose words once stirred souls, politicians who shaped the destiny of a nation, are now reduced to trembling beggars. Their intellect, their erudition, their former prestige mean absolutely nothing here. All that matters is the desperate, gnawing craving for a moment of escape, for the fleeting warmth of a cigarette. You watch as a distinguished scholar, his eyes haunted, his frame skeletal, approaches an Urka, his voice barely a whisper, pleading for a half-smoked butt. The humiliation is palpable, a silent scream in the suffocating air. Yet it is a necessary ritual, a price paid for a fragile, momentary reprieve. One cigarette, a simple roll of tobacco and paper, can be the difference between a relatively peaceful night and a night of brutal violence. It can spare you from a broken skull, from the casual cruelty of a bored Urka, from the sudden, inexplicable fury that can erupt in the barracks. The small, glowing ember held between desperate fingers is a shield, a silent negotiation, a fragile protection against the omnipresent threat of physical harm. The black humor of the camps, always present, always observant, encapsulates this brutal reality with chilling precision. Classes in the Gulag those who smoke, and those who breathe the leftovers. It is a stark, undeniable truth in this land of despair. A constant reminder that your survival, your very worth, is measured not in human dignity, but in the fleeting, intoxicating breath of smoke. The Gulag's justice system operates on a logic as perverse and unforgiving as the Siberian winter itself. Here, human life holds little value, a commodity as cheap and expendable as the countless trees felled in the taiga. Yet, you soon bear witness to a chilling truth: certain transgressions, those that threaten the fragile, controlled chaos of the camp, are deemed far more heinous than the simple act of taking a life. One brutal afternoon, a grim spectacle unfolds before your eyes. A man, his face etched with terror, is discovered with a hidden bottle of the crude, burning vodka. The discovery is met not with a typical punishment, but with an escalating, almost ritualistic savagery. Guards descend upon him, their faces impassive masks of cold fury. They drag him out into the biting snow, away from the relative shelter of the barracks, into the unforgiving expanse where the wind whips and claws. The thud of their heavy boots, the crunch of snow, and then the sickening sounds of the beating begin. The blows are relentless, a brutal rhythm against flesh and bone. You watch, your stomach churning, your breath catching in your throat, as the man's desperate cries slowly fade, absorbed by the vast, indifferent landscape. They beat him to death. A slow, agonizing demise played out against the stark white backdrop of the tundra. A chilling demonstration of the Gulag's priorities. It is a stark, undeniable truth. Killing another prisoner, often driven by desperate hunger or a minor disagreement, is frequently punished with less severity than the act of smuggling illicit drink. A murder might earn a few more years tacked onto an already impossible sentence. A transfer to an even harsher camp, or perhaps a perfunctory beating. But the violation of the camp's unwritten drug economy, the challenge to its fragile order, brings forth a fury that transcends mere punishment. It is a statement, a warning etched in blood and ice. Yet, despite this horrific display, despite the constant threat of a similar fate, the hunger for drugs remains stronger than any fear. It is a primal, relentless craving that gnaws at the soul, eclipsing even the terror of death. The promise of a moment's escape, of a brief respite from the unbearable reality, holds a power that no guard's fist, no brutal beating, can truly extinguish. In this desolate place, clutching a hidden bottle of vodka, feeling its illicit weight in your hand, is considered an act far more dangerous, far more provocative than wielding a knife. The knife offers a swift, desperate end, a momentary burst of violence. The bottle, however, offers a challenge to the system itself, a promise of escape that threatens the very fabric of control. A chilling piece of camp wisdom, whispered with a shiver of understanding, states the brutal reality: kill a man, and you go to prison. Hide vodka, and you become an ice sculpture. In the Gulag, certain forms of defiance carry a price far exceeding the value of a single human life. As the long Siberian nights stretch endlessly, cloaking the barracks in an impenetrable darkness, you find yourself huddled in the oppressive gloom, your hands trembling with a cold that seeps not just from the air, but from the depths of your own despair. The smallest precious stub of a cigarette feels almost sacred between your fingers. With painstaking care, you cup your hands, shielding the fragile flame from the imperceptible currents of air, until the tip glows a soft, inviting orange. The first drag is a ritual, a silent prayer, a deep inhalation that fills your lungs with that familiar, acrid warmth. For 2 blessed, fleeting minutes, the world outside shrinks, recedes, and for a precious, stolen moment, it ceases to exist. The distant, mournful howls of the guard dogs, a constant, chilling reminder of your captivity, fade into a dull echo. The crack of the whips, a sound that usually jolts your nerves, becomes a distant, muted whisper. Even the muffled screams, the ever-present soundtrack of suffering from other barracks, seem to dissolve into the vast, indifferent silence. In that tiny bubble of smoke and warmth, your mind finds a fragile, temporary sanctuary. The brutal reality of your existence, the gnawing hunger, the crushing exhaustion, the relentless fear, all of it recedes, replaced by a hazy, dreamlike calm. It's an alchemy of escape, a psychological journey into a temporary, self-created peace. That one drag, that single moment of smoky transcendence, possesses a power far beyond its physical effect. It becomes a psychological anchor, a tiny, defiant act of self-preservation that can carry you through another 12 hours of back-breaking labor. When your body is screaming in protest, when your muscles ache with unbearable intensity, when your mind is numb with repetition, the memory of that brief warmth, that fleeting peace, can become a lifeline. It's a promise, a whispered hope that there will be another moment, another drag, another chance to escape, if only for a few breaths. This promise, however fragile, however dangerous, sustains you. And for those whose bodies are ravaged by injury, whose bones ache and break under the merciless demands of the GULAG, morphine offers an even deeper, more profound form of psychological retreat. A broken bone, an open wound, the constant throb of untreated pain is transformed not into healing, but into a hazy silence. The sharp edges of agony are dulled, softened, replaced by a warm, floating sensation that lifts you above your physical torment. The world becomes a soft, focused dream, the suffering a distant echo, muffled and indistinct. This chemical escape is not true freedom, but a profound, internal liberation from the immediacy of pain. The black humor, ever present, ever cutting, captures this truth. Drugs don't make you live longer, they just make death prettier. In this desolate landscape, where life is a constant struggle, these brief, drug-induced escapes become the only true moments of autonomy, the only times you feel a fleeting sense of control over your own unbearable reality. For many who arrived at the GULAG, transported in those rattling cattle cars, their bodies and minds were unmarred by the grip of addiction. They came as innocent, or at least clean. They left, if they were fortunate enough to leave at all, as addicts. The GULAG, with its brutal efficiency, did not merely break bodies and spirits. It systematically forged new dependencies, weaving invisible chains that would bind its survivors long after the barbed wire fences were behind them. You witness this transformation, a slow, insidious process that leaves an indelible mark. The desperate cravings born of cold, hunger, and despair become deeply ingrained habits, etched into the very fabric of their being. Years, sometimes decades later, you might encounter these freed men, spectral figures haunting the edges of society. Their clothes are no longer rags, their faces perhaps a little less gaunt, but their eyes still hold the distant, haunted look of the camps. And you observe, with a chilling sense of recognition, the telltale signs of their enduring captivity. Their hands tremble, a nervous energy that never quite leaves them, even in the warmth of a city cafe. Their gazes dart around, perpetually searching, perpetually anxious. They beg, not for bread, but for cigarettes. Their voices raspy, their pleas tinged with the same desperate urgency you knew in the barracks. A half-smoked butt, discarded carelessly on the street, still holds the magnetic pull it did in the frozen wastes. The nicotine, the alcohol, the morphine. They have burrowed deep, becoming an integral part of their physiological and psychological landscape. The Gulag, in its grim irony, turned addiction into a life sentence. Even if the physical gates opened, even if the icy wind of Siberia no longer whipped at their faces, the prison had found a way to follow them. The craving for that fleeting warmth, that momentary escape, became an internal guard, a constant taskmaster. Their bodies, their minds, had been rewired to seek that solace, to chase that fading ember of peace. They were free. Yes, but forever bound to the mechanisms of survival they had learned in the camps. The black humor, whispered and grimly accepted within the Gulag's walls, takes on a new, more profound meaning when you witness these specters of the past. You can leave the Gulag, but the Gulag never leaves your lungs. It is a haunting truth, a testament to the insidious power of the camp, a final, cruel twist of fate that ensured the suffering would continue, silently, endlessly, long after the last prisoner had stumbled out into the uncertain light of a fragile freedom. Joseph Stalin, in his chilling vision, conceived of the Gulag as a crucible, a brutal forge designed to temper and shape the new Soviet man. He envisioned a society purged of dissent, where individuals would be re-educated, their wills bent to the collective, their spirits transformed into unyielding instruments of the state. Yet, the outcome was a profound and tragic irony, a stark repudiation of his utopian ideal. Instead of a new breed of devoted communists, the Gulag forged a society of the broken, of criminals hardened by desperation, of addicts enslaved by their cravings, and of bodies ravaged beyond repair, their spirits hollowed out by unimaginable suffering. The vast, frozen expanse of the Gulag, meant to cleanse and rebuild, became instead a breeding ground for every vice it sought to eliminate. In a world utterly devoid of freedom, of choice, of even the most basic human dignity, drugs became the last remaining vestige of autonomy. The cigarette, the crude vodka, the stolen morphine. These were not merely substances. They were symbols. They represented a defiant, desperate claim to a moment of self-possession, a fleeting whisper of control in a life where all control had been stripped away. They were the last freedom left, a bitter, dangerous kind of liberty purchased at an unimaginable cost. As you stand, perhaps, at the edge of this desolate memory, the final image that lingers is a stark and poignant one, a wisp of smoke, rising from a desperate hand, spiraling upwards into the vast, indifferent expanse of the Siberian night. It is a fragile, ephemeral thing, a transient breath against the enduring cold. And as you watch it, it slowly, inevitably, vanishes into nothingness, dissipating into the endless, star-pricked sky. It is a perfect metaphor for the lives consumed here, for the hopes that were crushed, for the spirits that simply faded away. The black humor, that constant, grim companion throughout the Gulag's nightmare, offers a final, cutting observation that encapsulates the profound failure of Stalin's vision. History called it re-education. Prisoners called it a national addiction. And as the silence settles, broken only by the whisper of the wind over the snow, you are left with the chilling understanding that the true legacy of the Gulag was not a new man, but a generation forever marked by desperation, by dependency, and by the indelible memory of those last, precious moments of escape. purchased with a puff of smoke or a gulp of fire. Our journey commences in the fading light of June 1941, a time steeped in a tense, almost palpable quiet before the storm. Imagine, if you will, the vast, undulating landscape stretching across Eastern Europe, dotted with small villages, ancient forests, and winding rivers. Here, amidst the gentle murmur of anticipation, stood the formidable, yet profoundly human, Red Army. When we look back at the images and narratives of this era, the immediate impression is often one of a monolithic, unyielding force. A steel-clad army, as the propaganda of the time so fiercely proclaimed. Yet, as we delicately peel back the layers of history, a different, more nuanced truth emerges. A truth woven into the very fabric of their everyday existence, their humble gear, and their quiet determination. In those pivotal weeks leading up to Operation Barbarossa, the massive German invasion, the Red Army found itself in a state of rapid, almost frantic, expansion. Millions of young men, many barely out of their teens, were called to serve, drawn from the far-flung corners of the Soviet Union. They arrived at training camps, often with little more than the clothes on their backs, ready to be molded into soldiers. This immense influx of personnel created an unprecedented demand for equipment, a demand that the burgeoning Soviet industrial complex struggled to meet with consistent quality and quantity. The reality, therefore, was far removed from the idealized image. These were not legions clad in gleaming armor, but rather men equipped with gear that was, by many accounts, simple, robust, and at times, even crude. The great question that hung silently in the air, unspoken but felt deeply by every officer and every recruit, was whether this seemingly inexpensive, yet versatile, equipment could truly provide them with the means to survive the unimaginable ordeal that lay ahead. It was a gamble, a stark testament to the pragmatic, often austere, philosophy that underscored Soviet military doctrine. Every single item issued to a soldier, from the heaviest canvas greatcoat to the smallest wooden spoon, held within it the potential for life or death. A reliable rain cape could prevent pneumonia. A sturdy canteen could stave off dehydration. A well-maintained rifle was, quite literally, the difference between living and perishing. The very concept of a military uniform, of standard issue equipment, speaks to an attempt to normalize and manage the chaos of war. Yet, for these soldiers, each item transcended its utilitarian purpose to become something more profound. It became a silent companion, a protector, a fragile link to survival. The weight of their rucksacks, the feel of their simple boots on the ground, the texture of their woolen greatcoats, these were not just material possessions. They were extensions of their very being, tools in the most fundamental struggle for existence. As we gently imagine those columns of Red Army soldiers marching, their greatcoats rolled neatly around their rucksacks, their helmets swinging with a rhythmic cadence, let us not see only the collective, but the individual within. Each man, with his own hopes and fears, his own memories of home, and his own quiet resolve, carried the burden of his nation's fate, quite literally, on his back. And it is with this understanding, this empathetic perspective, that we begin to unpack the layers of their reality. Starting with the very heart of their personal kit, the humble rucksack that carried their world. This quiet opening, this initial step into their reality, sets the stage for a journey not of grand battles, but of quiet endurance, of resourcefulness, and of the profound human spirit that found strength in scarcity. The stage is set. The curtain, for now, remains drawn on the dramatic events to come, allowing us a peaceful moment to prepare for an intimate encounter with history. Before anything else, let's open the M39 rucksack, that iconic and understated symbol of a Soviet soldier, a testament to practical design under the looming shadow of conflict. This wasn't merely a bag. It was the soldier's portable world, containing the sparse necessities that would sustain him through unimaginable hardships. Introduced in 1939, this rucksack was a masterclass in compromise, compact enough to be carried by millions, affordable enough for mass production, yet remarkably practical in its design, its appearance almost unassuming, belied the critical role it played in the daily life and survival of the Red Army soldier. Picture it, a robust canvas bag, often in shades of olive green or khaki, designed to withstand the brutal realities of war. Its structure was straightforward, a main compartment offering ample space, cleverly divided to help organize its precious contents. On the exterior, two smaller, often rectangular, outer pockets provided quick access to frequently needed items. The corners and stress points were often reinforced with sturdy leather, a detail that spoke to an anticipation of rough handling and prolonged use. This was not a delicate item. It was built to endure the mud of Russian autumn, the snows of winter, and the relentless wear of endless marches. What truly gave the Red Army soldier his distinctive silhouette on the march, however, was not just the rucksack itself, but the way his greatcoat was incorporated into the load. Imagine the thick, heavy wool greatcoat, rolled tightly, almost like a cylindrical bolster, and then carefully strapped around the outside of the rucksack. This method served multiple purposes. It kept the bulky coat secure and out of the way. It provided an additional layer of protection for the rucksack's contents. And most importantly, it offered a unique visual signature that became synonymous with the Soviet infantrymen, a silhouette that would be etched into the collective memory of the war. The sight of these rolling forms, moving across the landscape, evoked a sense of quiet, almost stoic, resilience. The outer pockets, easily accessible, were reserved for the small, personal items that offered a semblance of normalcy in a chaotic world. Here, a soldier might meticulously store a straight razor, its edge perhaps dulled by repeated use, alongside a simple toothbrush and a small tube of toothpaste. Fragments of a civilian routine clinging to a military existence, a gun cleaning kit, an essential for maintaining the lifeblood of his defense, would also find its place, its oily scent a constant reminder of his primary duty. For some, a separate bread bag was often added, a simple cloth satchel used to carry their mess kit, a tin plate, a cup, and, most critically, their daily ration of black bread and perhaps a piece of salted fat. These were the small comforts, the tangible links to a life beyond the battlefield. Yet, the M39 rucksack, for all its initial practicality, faced an inevitable reality: the escalating demands of total war. Its somewhat complex design, with the multiple leather reinforcements and the partitioned interior, proved too time-consuming and expensive for the frantic pace of mass wartime production. As the conflict deepened and stretched on, simplicity became the ultimate necessity, and the M39 was eventually replaced by even more basic, easier-to-manufacture designs. This shift reflected the harsh trade-offs war demanded, where expediency often trumped ideal functionality. But for those who carried it in the early, desperate days of the war, the M39 rucksack held more than just gear. To open a soldier's pack was to glimpse a fragment of his soul, a window into his personal world, Beyond the uniforms and the tools of war, one might find a crumpled letter from a mother, its delicate script speaking of home and longing, or a faded photograph of a sweetheart tucked away for safekeeping. And always, almost invariably, a scrap of black bread, often hardened, a stark symbol of sustenance, of the preciousness of life itself. These were not just items. They were anchors to humanity, quiet whispers of the lives these men had left behind, and the reasons they fought to endure. The M39 rucksack, in its very being, became a silent narrator of personal stories, a canvas for the quiet resilience of men facing an unimaginable future. In the vast and often unforgiving landscapes where the Red Army operated, especially during the brutal early years of the war, survival hinged on the most basic provisions: shelter, warmth, and the ability to endure the elements. Among the most iconic and essential pieces of equipment was the plash palatka, a marvel of multifunctionality that served as far more than just a rain cape. Its very existence spoke volumes about the Soviet approach to military logistics: simple, versatile, and designed for maximum utility with minimal resources. Imagine a soldier, miles from any permanent shelter, the sky opening up with a sudden, chilling downpour. He might be hunched under his plash palatka, the thin, yet remarkably durable sheet of canvas or treated cotton providing the only barrier between his skin and the relentless torrent. It was a stark image of vulnerability and resilience, a solitary figure dwarfed by the immense expanse of the landscape, relying on a single piece of cloth to stave off hypothermia, to maintain a fleeting moment of dry comfort amidst the pervasive dampness. This rain cape was his personal sanctuary, however meager. But Posiba Palatka was much more than a cape. Its clever design, featuring grommets and buttons along its edges, allowed it to transform. Two or more soldiers could button their palatkas together to create a rudimentary tent, a temporary haven from the wind and rain, perhaps even offering a fleeting sense of communal warmth. In an emergency, it could be improvised into a stretcher, offering a painful but vital means of transporting a wounded comrade. And in the most somber of circumstances, it often served as a shroud, offering a final, dignified covering for the fallen, a stark and haunting reminder of war's ultimate reality. The palatka, therefore, became a silent witness to the full spectrum of military life, from mundane daily discomfort to the most profound moments of sacrifice. Beneath this outer layer, the soldier's undergarments provided a foundational level of protection against the often extreme temperatures. He was typically issued simple cotton undershirts, either round-necked or V-necked, paired with long underpants. For the biting cold of winter, heavier cotton variants were provided, designed to offer a modest, yet crucial, degree of insulation. Each man was usually issued 2 sets, a practical arrangement that allowed for a basic rotation. As they marched through the churned mud and unforgiving snow, one set would be worn, slowly absorbing sweat and grime, while the other, perhaps slightly less soiled, awaited its turn. There was little opportunity for washing, of course. So this rotation was more about managing the discomfort and the inevitable accumulation of dampness. The simplicity of these garments, their unadorned functionality, became another quiet symbol of the austerity that pervaded the Red Army's existence. Even the most intimate items reflected the scarcity and the unwavering emphasis on endurance. The imagery of the plash palatka sometimes wrapped around the wounded, cradling them as best as it could, or draped over the still forms of the dead, whispering of their final journey, is profoundly moving. It reinforces the grim realities of conflict, where every item, even something as unassuming as a rain cape, carried a weight of emotional significance far beyond its material worth. These simple pieces of equipment were not just tools. They were silent companions through fear, through exhaustion, through loss. The overarching message conveyed by the Mangyuan, Plash Palatka, and the humble undergarments was one of profound wisdom. Simplicity was not a weakness. On the contrary, it became a powerful teacher, an unyielding drill sergeant, training these men for unparalleled survival. Without the luxury of complex, specialized gear, they learned to be resourceful, to adapt, to make do with what they had, and to find strength in their own ingenuity. This forced simplicity cultivated a deep-seated resilience, forging a spirit of self-reliance that would prove invaluable as the war unfolded. It was a quiet lesson, learned through discomfort and hardship, that would echo through the long, arduous years of conflict. A testament to the enduring power of the human spirit when pushed to its very limits. Among the various items issued to a Soviet soldier, the gas mask and its accompanying bag represented a fascinating paradox of military doctrine versus battlefield pragmatism. From 1938 to 1942, the standard issue included the M1936 gas mask bag, housing the SHM-1 mask and the MT-4 filter. These were instruments born from the terrifying lessons of World War I, when chemical weapons had wrought unprecedented horrors upon the trenches. The very presence of these items spoke a chilling preparation for a future where poison gas might once again blanket the battlefield, a threat that lingered in the collective military consciousness of the time. However, the reality on the Eastern Front, especially in the early stages of World War II, quickly diverted from these grim expectations. While chemical warfare was a constant fear, it was never widely employed by either side. As such, the gas mask, a bulky and often cumbersome piece of equipment, found itself relegated to a secondary and often entirely different purpose. The Soviet soldiers, with their ingrained pragmatism and acute understanding of their immediate needs, began to repurpose their gas mask bags, transforming them from instruments of defense against an unseen enemy into incredibly versatile personal satchels. Imagine the typical contents of such a bag, no longer just the rubber mask and filter, but perhaps a soldier's meager food rations for the day, a hunk of black bread, a dried fish, or a few hard biscuits. The pungent smell of tobacco might emanate from within, as cigarettes, perhaps rolled from low-quality local blends, found their home there. A small, battery-operated flashlight, a rare luxury for many, might be tucked alongside, its beam a tiny beacon in the endless nights. Most profoundly, these bags often cradled precious letters from home, their fragile paper carrying the scent of ink and distant memories, along with a worn leather wallet, perhaps containing a few rubles or a cherished photograph of a loved one. Each item, carefully chosen, revealed a soldier's priorities: survival, comfort, and the enduring connection to his personal world. This vivid contrast with their German counterparts is particularly striking. German soldiers, often adhering strictly to military regulations, carried their gas masks religiously, their neatly strapped bags an almost uniform part of their kit. For them, it was a piece of essential, even sacrosanct, equipment. But for the Red Army soldier, doctrine often bent to the will of practicality. The bulky mask was frequently discarded or left behind, deemed less crucial than the immediate need for personal storage. The bag, however, remained, transformed by ingenious necessity. The image is a powerful one, a canvas bag, originally designed to protect against the insidious threat of poison gas, now instead reeking faintly of tobacco, carrying the sweet, earthy scent of a lover's pressed flower, or holding a dog-eared photograph, a quiet link to a life far removed from the brutal front lines. It became, in essence, a personal locker, a small repository of the everyday and the deeply cherished, far from its intended purpose. This transformation of the gas mask bag into a personal satchel stands as a potent symbol of Soviet pragmatism on the battlefield. It speaks to a profound adaptability, an ability to make the most of limited resources, to bend regulations when common sense dictated, and to prioritize immediate, tangible needs over hypothetical threats. It underscores the resourcefulness of the individual soldier, who, faced with harsh realities, often found ingenious ways to adapt his equipment to suit his most pressing concerns. This seemingly small detail, the repurposing of a gas mask bag, offers a quiet yet profound insight into the mindset of the Red Army. An army that, by necessity, learned to redefine the meaning of utility and survival, finding strength and ingenuity in the very act of making do. It tells a story not of strict adherence, but of quiet, individual ingenuity in the face of immense pressure. Amidst the vastness of the Eastern Front, the daily ritual of eating and drinking transcended mere sustenance. It became a grounding force, a brief respite, and a quiet communal act. The items involved were, predictably, simple, reflecting the ethos of practicality and mass production. At the heart of a soldier's meal kit was the Mess Tin M1936, a clever and compact design. Imagine it a kidney-shaped, two-piece aluminum container, specifically designed to fit snugly against the body or inside a pack without creating awkward bulk. The lid, often doubling as a shallow plate, typically featured a small, foldable handle, allowing it to be heated over an open flame or carried with ease. This tin was not merely for eating, it was often the vessel for cooking, warming meager rations, or even boiling water when a fire could be managed. Accompanying the mess tin were the simple drinking cups. These were typically made of lightweight aluminum, much like the mess tin, or sometimes from enamel-coated steel, which, while more robust, was also prone to chipping, revealing the dark metal underneath like tiny scars. Each chip told a silent story of countless uses, of being dropped, of being scraped clean, of enduring the rigors of a soldier's life. The spoon, the soldier's primary utensil, was either standard issue, often a simple, unadorned steel or aluminum design, or, just as frequently, scavenged or personally carved from wood. A wooden spoon, meticulously shaped, carried a warmth and an individuality that its metallic counterpart could not. A small piece of craftsmanship amidst the brutality. The typical meal itself was a stark reflection of the realities of war and the limitations of supply lines. Black bread, dense and often sourdough, was the absolute staple. A dark, earthy foundation for every meal. It was often coarse, sometimes even slightly stale, but it provided essential calories and a profound sense of fullness. Accompanying this might be thin soup, often a watery broth with a few vegetables, perhaps a hint of meat if fortunes were favorable. Potatoes, readily available and hearty, often formed a substantial part of the meal, boiled or roasted over an open fire. And to provide crucial energy and warmth, a small chunk of fat, perhaps salted pork fat or butter, would be offered, a precious commodity to be savored. These meals, while simple, were the fuel that kept the Red Army moving, fighting, and enduring. Active eating was often a quiet affair, shared in silence, perhaps around a flickering campfire or huddled in a dugout. Imagine the scene: soldiers passing a canteen from hand to hand, each man taking a measured sip of water, the liquid a precious commodity in itself. The silence was not one of discomfort, but of shared understanding, of mutual reliance, and of the unspoken weight of their shared circumstances. The canteen, typically a 1932 aluminum model, often came with a sturdy cloth carrier, protecting the metal from dents and helping to insulate its contents. Its lid was almost invariably attached by a small chain, preventing it from being lost in the chaos of movement or battle. Despite the issuance of canteens, the harsh reality of the front lines often dictated more desperate measures for hydration. Men frequently drank straight from rivers and streams, risking contamination or melted snow and ice during the brutal winters, boiling it when possible, but often consuming it raw out of necessity. The constant demand for water, for any liquid to quench the thirst brought on by exertion and fear, was a pervasive struggle. The memory of clear, fresh water from a village well or a clean spring became a distant luxury, replaced by the ever-present challenge of finding and securing enough to survive. Thus, the simple act of eating and drinking becomes a narrative in itself. It's a story of essential needs met with minimal resources, of a profound appreciation for every morsel, every sip. It speaks to the ingenuity of the human spirit in finding comfort and communion amidst deprivation. These humble items, the mess tin, the cup, the spoon, the canteen, were more than just tools for survival. They were quiet witnesses to the soldier's daily struggle, symbols of his resilience, and often the silent centerpiece of moments of shared humanity on the desolate and unforgiving battlefields of the Eastern Front. As we continue our journey into the practical world of the Red Army soldier, we turn our attention to the essential items that were the very architecture of his combat readiness: the belts, ammunition pouches, and the precious, life-sustaining bullets. These components, while seemingly mundane, formed the crucial nexus between the soldier and his ability to defend himself and his comrades. The foundation of this system was the belt, typically crafted from either sturdy leather or robust webbing, measuring approximately 1.5 to 2 inches wide. This belt was not just for holding up trousers, it was the primary anchor for a soldier's vital gear, carefully designed to bear the weight of his fighting load. Attached to this belt were the M1937 ammunition pouches, specifically designed to hold 3 clips of Mosin Nagant rifle ammunition, each clip containing 5 rounds. This meant each pouch, when fully loaded, held 15 rounds of the powerful 7.62 54R cartridge, a caliber that had served the Russian military for decades and would continue to do so with unwavering reliability. A standard load for a soldier usually involved 2 of these main pouches, placing a total of 30 rounds directly accessible on his person. However, given the intensity of combat and the inherent unreliability of supply lines, an auxiliary cloth pouch, often a simple fabric bag, would be added, typically containing an additional 20 rounds. This brought the total on-person ammunition to a modest 50 rounds. To put this in perspective, compared to the sustained firepower often depicted in popular media, this was a relatively limited supply, underscoring the critical importance of marksmanship, fire discipline, and ammunition conservation. This seemingly modest allocation of ammunition highlights a chronic and pervasive issue: shortage. Throughout the war, Red Army soldiers frequently faced the grim reality of insufficient supplies. As a direct consequence, the act of scavenging ammunition from fallen comrades, regardless of their nationality, became a grim but necessary practice. Every single 7.62 54R round was therefore not just a piece of brass and lead. It was both a weapon and an incredibly precious commodity. A tangible link to survival that could not be wasted. The metallic gleam of a freshly loaded clip, the satisfying click as it seated into the rifle's internal magazine. These were small assurances in a world filled with uncertainty. To help distribute the considerable weight of the belt and its attached pouches, soldiers also utilized Y-straps. These suspenders, as we will explore in a later scene, connected to the belt at various points, drawing the load upwards and across the shoulders, thereby reducing the strain on the hips and lower back, particularly during long marches. This complex system, while effective when properly adjusted, added another layer to the soldier's already intricate daily routine of equipping himself. Imagine the quiet, almost sacred, ritual of a soldier preparing for patrol or an impending attack. He might carefully count his rounds, perhaps meticulously cleaning each one of any mud or dust. Picture his frostbitten fingers, stiff and numb in the bitter cold, fumbling with the small, metallic clips, attempting to load them swiftly and precisely into the internal magazine of his Mosin Nagant rifle. This wasn't merely a mechanical act. It was a deeply personal interaction with his primary tool of survival. Each round represented a potential shot at an enemy, a chance to protect his position, or a last desperate defense of his life. The combination of belts, pouches, and ammunition, therefore, speaks volumes about the Red Army's operational realities. It highlights an army that, by necessity, was taught to be economical, to conserve, and to rely on its soldiers' ability to make do with what little they had. These items were not just gear, they were vital extensions of the soldier's will, the means by which he engaged with the brutal world around him. Each component a silent testament to the daily struggle for survival and the profound value placed on every single bullet. It was a system built on robust simplicity, but one that demanded unwavering discipline and resourcefulness from the men who wore it. As our understanding of the Soviet soldiers' equipment deepens, we encounter another triad of essential items, each imbued with its own story of utility, adaptation, and stark necessity: the grenade, the canteen, and perhaps most surprisingly, the entrenching shovel. These were the tools of both offense and defense, of immediate danger and quiet, persistent survival. First, let us consider the RGD-33 stick grenade. This was not a simple, single-purpose explosive device, but rather an ingeniously adaptable weapon. Its design allowed it to be used in two distinct configurations offensively, with a fragmentation sleeve attached, which distributed shrapnel over a wider area, making it ideal for clearing enemy positions, and defensively, without the sleeve, providing a more contained blast suitable for close-quarters combat, or when seeking to disorient rather than simply destroy. The grenade pouch, often a simple canvas bag, was designed to carry two of these powerful tools, along with their separate fuses, which the soldier would insert just prior to throwing. The clunk of these grenades against the soldier's thigh during a march, the slight sway of their weight, was a constant, unsettling reminder of the explosive power at his disposal, a stark contrast to the quiet moments of the long march. Then there was the aluminum canteen, typically the 1932 model we touched upon earlier, a humble yet indispensable vessel. With its fabric cover, often a faded khaki or olive green, and its toggle closure. It represented the ever-present need for hydration. While we've spoken of the thirst and the desperate measures for water, the canteen itself was a source of small comfort. A familiar shape carried close to the body. The rhythmic sloshing of water within it, a quiet accompaniment to the soldier's footsteps, was a sound of life. A promise of temporary relief from the parched throat and the weary body. It was refilled at every opportunity, cherished and guarded. A small reservoir of hope in a world of constant deprivation. But perhaps no item embodies the Red Army soldier's ethos of multifunctionality and sheer endurance more profoundly than the entrenching shovel. This was not merely a tool for digging, though that was its primary function, essential for creating defensive positions, foxholes, and shallow graves. Its robust design and sharpened edge meant it could also be wielded as an axe for chopping through undergrowth or firewood. Its flat blade could serve as a makeshift hammering surface, driving in tent pegs or repairing equipment. In a pinch, heated over a fire. It could even become a crude frying pan for cooking meager rations. Most strikingly, however, the entrenching shovel frequently transformed into a brutal, close-quarters weapon. When ammunition ran low, or in the terrifying intimacy of hand-to-hand combat, the shovel, with its sturdy wooden handle and sharp steel blade, became a devastating instrument. Imagine the vivid, chilling image of a shovel blade, not stained with mud or earth, but with something far more visceral, the grim residue of brutal, desperate combat. It was a weapon of last resort, a testament to the savagery of the fighting and the grim determination of the soldiers who wielded it. The shovel, therefore, transcended its utilitarian purpose to become a profound symbol for the Red Army soldier. It was his closest companion, a silent witness to every aspect of his grueling existence. From digging his shelter to defending his life, it was always there, reliable and ever-present. This deep connection was encapsulated in a powerful saying that echoed through the ranks. A soldier might lose his rifle, but never his shovel. This maxim underscored the shovel's irreplaceable value, not just as a tool, but as a symbol of self-reliance, of the fundamental ability to protect oneself and to carve out a meager existence from the unforgiving earth. These items, the grenade, the canteen, and the shovel, collectively paint a picture of an army defined by its stark efficiency, its resourcefulness, and the unwavering resilience of the men who carried them. To understand the full weight, literally and figuratively, of a Soviet soldier's kit, we must delve into the intricate system of webbing and straps that held it all together. This network of leather or canvas was more than just an accessory. It was the skeletal structure of his combat load, designed to balance the diverse array of items we've discussed. At the core of this system were the Y-shaped suspenders, a crucial component for distributing the often considerable weight of equipment across the shoulders, aiming to alleviate some of the strain on the lower back and hips during the relentless marches. Imagine the soldier's morning ritual, perhaps in the dim light of dawn, or by the flickering glow of a dugout lamp. The setup was far from intuitive, requiring a precise and often time-consuming threading of the belt through various loops on the pouches, which then connected to the suspenders. Each strap, each buckle, each connection point had its place in an exact order, a specific sequence to ensure the load was distributed evenly and securely. This wasn't a quick, casual arrangement. It was a meticulous preparation for the day's unknown demands. The Y-straps themselves were designed with a degree of adjustability, typically offering 3 different lengths to accommodate the varying physiques of individual soldiers. This attempt at customization, however, often fell short in the chaotic reality of wartime, where individual adjustments were often rushed or neglected in favor of expediency. Nevertheless, the intent was to provide a better ergonomic fit, to make the heavy loads slightly more manageable. Men would spend precious minutes each morning, or before embarking on a long march, carefully donning and adjusting their gear. The rustle of canvas, the creak of leather, the metallic clink of buckles. These were the quiet sounds of an army preparing. A daily symphony of individual effort contributing to the collective readiness. This deliberate process was a small, almost meditative act in the face of the impending chaos. Comparing this setup to the gear of their German adversaries often revealed a striking difference. German equipment, renowned for its meticulous engineering, often presented a tidier, more organized appearance, with specialized compartments and more refined things. Soviet gear, by contrast, frequently bore the marks of improvisation. While functional, it often looked looser, less uniformly aligned, reflecting the pressures of mass production and the necessity of making do. It spoke to a different philosophy, one that prioritized rugged functionality and adaptability over aesthetic precision. However, as the war dragged on, as the marches grew longer and the battles more desperate, the very complexity of the suspenders began to work against the soldiers. Weight, even when distributed, was still immense. The constant need for speed, for agility, for the ability to move quickly and unencumbered, often led to a significant shift in practice. Many soldiers, prioritizing mobility and the immediate demands of combat over strict regulation, began to abandon the suspenders entirely. They would rely solely on their belts, perhaps accepting a less ergonomic load in exchange for the freedom of movement. This wasn't a casual disregard for discipline, but a hard-won lesson learned in the crucible of battle lightness. In the end, mattered more than rigid adherence to regulations. The ability to sprint, to duck, to maneuver swiftly could mean the difference between life and death. This evolution in how the webbing and straps were utilized provides a subtle but profound insight into the brutal pragmatism of the Red Army. It tells a story of an army constantly adapting, shedding anything deemed non-essential, and redefining efficiency based on the harsh dictates of the front. The intricate dance of straps and buckles, once a careful morning ritual, slowly gave way to the raw, visceral need for speed and survival. It was a quiet testament to the enduring power of human adaptation, a lesson whispered by the wind across countless battlefields. Beyond the rucksacks, the mess tins, and the ammunition lay the uniform itself, the outward manifestation of the Soviet soldier. Yet beneath its practical design beat the heart of a man. The uniform, particularly the M35 tunic, presented a picture of rugged utility, crafted from sturdy cotton for the warmer months and heavier wool for the biting Russian winters. It was designed for endurance. Elbows were often reinforced, acknowledging the wear and tear of crawling, resting, and fighting in the field. Small details, like the 1940 insignia, a subtle triangle, often with red piping and crossed rifles, were sewn onto the collar tabs, quietly proclaiming rank and branch of service, a whisper of formal identity within the vast collective. The lower half of the uniform, however, presented a more distinct and often challenging aspect. Low boots paired with puttees. Puttees were strips of cloth, typically wool or canvas, meticulously wrapped around the lower leg, from ankle to just below the knee, serving as a protective gaiter. Sometimes, in desperate circumstances, old blankets would be repurposed for this essential function. This wrapping was a skill in itself, requiring precision to ensure a snug fit that wouldn't unravel during long marches, yet wasn't so tight as to cut off circulation. The feel of the rough fabric against the skin, the slight pressure as they were wound, became a constant sensation for the soldier. The reality of these puttees on the march was often a grim one. Imagine the relentless mud of the Russian autumn, a thick, tenacious goo that clung to everything. Picture the puttees, once neatly wrapped, now utterly soaked and caked with mud, hardening into stiff, malodorous casts as they dried, reeking with the pervasive scent of mildew and damp earth. This constant dampness, friction, often led to agonizing chafing, skin irritation, and even trench foot, a persistent enemy in its own right. They were a testament to the sheer physical discomfort that was an unyielding companion to the Soviet soldier. Observing a column of Red Army soldiers from afar, the impression might have been one of stoic uniformity. The lines of olive green or drab brown, the rolling greatcoats, the rhythmic stride, it all spoke of a unified, disciplined force. But as one drew closer, the individual realities became strikingly apparent. These uniforms were rarely pristine. They were often patched, sometimes crudely, with whatever fabric was available, revealing a profound lack of standardization and a testament to the constant need for repair and reuse. A missing button replaced with a twig, a tear roughly stitched with coarse thread. Each imperfection told a story of hardship, of resourcefulness, of the relentless wear and tear of war. Up close, the picture was less of pristine order, more of ragged, enduring humanity. It was not until later in the war, notably through the Lend-Lease program with the Western Allies, that better quality, standardized boots began to arrive, offering a rare luxury of comfort and durability. But in the crucial, desperate year of 1941, such comforts were virtually unknown, almost mythical. The low boots and puttees were the standard, a gritty, tangible symbol of the early Red Army's struggle, a quiet testament to their ability to endure discomfort as a fundamental aspect of their duty. The uniform, therefore, became a second skin, absorbing the sweat, the mud, the blood, and the stories of the men within. It was a canvas upon which the brutal realities of war were etched, a silent chronicle of individual endurance within a collective struggle. It was a powerful, if simple, testament to the human spirit's capacity to persevere, to find strength not in luxury, but in the raw, unyielding demands of survival. As our journey through the quiet artifacts of the Soviet soldier draws to a close, we arrive at two elements that, in their contrasting forms, encapsulate the essence of his identity and his means of survival: the identification booklet and the ever-reliable Mosin Nagant rifle. These items, one a fragile piece of paper, the other a robust instrument of war, together tell a profound story of individual existence amidst monumental conflict. At the outbreak of the war in June 1941, a stark and unsettling reality prevailed any, perhaps even most. Red Army soldiers had no official identification. In the confusion of rapid mobilization and the sheer scale of the conflict, the bureaucratic mechanisms simply couldn't keep pace. This absence of formal identity papers meant that, for countless men, their only proof of who they were, their only tangible link to a life beyond the uniform, were the letters they carried from home. Imagine these letters, often crumpled and worn, their ink perhaps smudged by dampness or repeated handling, each one a precious fragment of family, of love, of a life waiting to be returned to. These were more than just communications. They were the quiet keepers of their very being. It wasn't until October 1941, months into the devastating invasion, that new photo ID booklets finally began to be issued. A belated attempt to bring order to the human chaos. The arrival of these small, official documents, bearing a grainy photograph and a few handwritten details, was a significant moment. A quiet reaffirmation of individual existence within the vast, impersonal machinery of war. Alongside this fragile assertion of identity stood the primary weapon of the Red Army soldier, the Mosin-Nagant rifle. This was no new, cutting-edge marvel of engineering. Rather, it was a venerable veteran. A bolt-action rifle that had seen decades of service across multiple conflicts. Its design, while simple, was renowned for its unwavering reliability, its robustness, and its ability to withstand the harshest conditions imaginable. From the vast, open plains to the dense, frozen forests. The Mosin-Nagant was a constant companion, its presence a comforting weight in a soldier's hands. The emotional detail of the Mosin-Nagant is found in its iconic sound, the metallic clack of its bolt being cycled. A distinctive, unmistakable sound that echoed across countless battlefields. It was a sound of preparation, of action, of desperate defense. For a soldier, this sound was as familiar as his own heartbeat, a deep, resonant reassurance in the face of chaos. It was the sound of life, of survival, and of a relentless will to fight. Each rifle, often worn smooth in places from countless hours of handling, bore its own silent history, its own record of battles fought and lives changed. From the crumpled letters, smelling of home and hope, to the sturdy wooden stock of the Mosin-Nagant, scarred by use and imbued with purpose, every single item carried by the Red Army soldier told a story. It was a story not just of war, but of the human spirit's enduring capacity for survival, for love, for resilience. These were men who had little, yet they turned that scarcity into a profound source of strength. They learned to be resourceful, to adapt, to find power in their collective will, and to make every meager item count. And that, in its most profound sense, is why the Red Army endured. Not because of endless resources or flawless equipment, but because of the men who composed its ranks, men who found strength in simplicity, who held on to their humanity through the smallest, most personal items, and who wielded their humble tools with unwavering resolve. Their story is a quiet testament to the enduring power of the human spirit, a narrative whispered by the winds of history, reminding us that even in the most brutal of times, the quiet dignity of the individual perseveres. As the last echoes of their story gently fade into the stillness of the night, we are left with a quiet appreciation for their journey and the enduring lessons it offers about resilience, resourcefulness, and the quiet, unwavering spirit of humanity.